Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest on the very stormy conditions that are continuing for all over the coming days, as we do have another named storm after Storm Irwin. We've now got Storm Herminia, which is currently sat out in the mid-Atlantic region. It is moving our way as the jet stream continues to power in. Now it doesn't follow the traditional Met Office name list, and that is because it's been named by the Spanish Met Office, as it is going to have a much larger wind field, and the sort of Spanish Met Office has got there first, essentially, with the naming of this system. It's nowhere near as intense as Irwin, I must stress that. We aren't looking at 100-mile-per-hour winds, maybe 70, an isolated 80, but it is going to have a much wider wind field and last a much longer period of time, as it kind of stalls just off the coast of Ireland before closing in, and it's, as I said, got a much larger wind field affecting much of France, Spain and Portugal. We'll look at the latest on Storm Herminia, looking at all the relevant warnings that have been issued. Yellow warnings at the moment, but there is a risk of amber warnings in the parts of the southwest in the next day or so. To have a look at the latest UKV and our pairs runs, looking at those wind speeds and, of course, looking at the precipitation associated with this, as we are going to continue to see lots more heavy rain, perhaps even more heavy rain from this system than we saw from Irwin. We're going to see some more snow, potentially even some frost, as we've got a lot of cold polar maritime air mixing in. And then we'll finish the video by having a look at the longer range, as we are going to see a reversal in fortunes, as it does look likely later on next working week we will see higher pressure building in from the south. It is quite uncertain exactly what sort of high pressure we'll see, what positioning will it take, what sort of air masses will we see involved. But one thing we know is the pressure will be rising. Pretty much all models are in agreement for that. So to start February, it does look like we are going to eliminate these stormy conditions with it settling down quite a bit more. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. If we start on the live radar, you can see at the moment it's actually pretty dry for much of England, Wales and Scotland. We've got a few wintry showers in the far north. As I said, polar maritime air mass has moved in, so it is actually pretty cold outside. Temperatures mid to high single digits at best today, feeling much colder in the north and the west, and of course seeing some snow associated with that. We are in a bit of a dry slot, but you can already see another weather front is moving in from the west, and already seeing a bit of snow associated with this across parts of the Republic of Ireland, as again we do have cold air mixing in. But these sort of squally bands will slowly move eastwards over the coming hours before Herminia starts to arrive through Sunday. Now, if you look at the future radar, again, don't want to show this to say exactly where precipitation will be, but it's just to exemplify where we are seeing Storm Herminia at the moment. It's this system out here, this hook in precipitation sat out in the mid-Atlantic. It is slowly going to head eastwards and slightly northwards, and is going to sit just to the south and west of the Republic of Ireland, and it's on the southern and eastern flanks. This sort of stretch here into parts of southern England, Republic of Ireland and Wales, that's where we're going to see the strongest winds, and of course that's why it's been named by the Spanish Met Office. Of course those winds are also going to affect Spain, France and Portugal. Now, if you look at the temperatures right now, you can see it is pretty chilly, especially in the north and west, closer to that colder air flooding in from the North Atlantic. We are seeing temperatures here only getting a couple of degrees above freezing at best. Further south, it's a little bit more yellow, which is indicative of temperatures more around the 6 or 7 degree mark, and you see where that cold air is flooding in. As you can see, a big warm sector across sort of France, Germany, Switzerland there. That is the remnants of the milder air we saw earlier this week getting pushed away. Also, just want to have a look at the past 24-hour precipitation, or snowfall, to be more precise. As I said, we have seen quite a bit of snow. Look at this, quite a lot of snowfall. Again, most of this not accumulating, most of it just falling, as the ground is still pretty mild, very wet, so yeah, not a lot of accumulating snow at all, but higher ground of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even a bit of Republic of Ireland there, little bits and bobs of snow. And past 24-hour precipitation, again, seeing quite a lot of widespread rain, but you can see why we had rain and snow warnings issued for Scotland, as that was the main focus from Irwin. Now, if you do have a look at the latest weather warnings, we do have one warning issued for the remnants of Storm Irwin that does expire imminently as I'm recording this at 3 p.m. this afternoon, just for some of those stronger winds on the back edge. We won't look at this in detail. As I said, it is about to expire. Got a further wind warning issued from 6 p.m. this evening, so probably just as some of you are watching this until 6 a.m. Again, it's for that band of precipitation that we've got across the Republic of Ireland, slowly moving in, and it's going to pick those winds up through this evening, and we will see some more gusty winds. Not looking, amazing, nothing compared to Storm Irwin, but 50, maybe an isolated 60. And then a snow and ice warning issued for much of Scotland and all of Northern Ireland. Again, we're looking at a few centimetres of snow across moderate hills. Again, is associated with that band, so there's some convection within it, so there will be some quite high precipitation rates, so could be some locally heavy falls, especially over higher ground, maybe 5 to 10 centimetres, where it all falls as snow and readily settles, i.e. 300-400 metres plus. But if we do move into the second half of the weekend, we start to see those impacts shifting further southwards. We've still got those warnings issued further northwards, but we've got a wind warning here issued for Northern Ireland from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. tomorrow. This is starting to see those impacts of Herminia arriving. 40 to 50 quite widely, up to 60. And again, with some of the recovery work from Storm Irwin, as we see here from the further detail, it could produce some more significant impacts because, as I said, lots of trees, infrastructure could be weakened. So again, that's why that warning is in force. And then we've just got warnings issued further southwards. As I said, the main risk of Herminia will be across southern and western parts of England, Wales and the Republic of Ireland. Widespread wind warning here issued for much of western face coasts, for southern coast as well, for all of the portion of Wales and all of southwest England, for 50 to 60 widely, up to 70 in a few spots. So again, potentially even stronger than Storm Irwin was in these specific regions. And then a widespread rain warning, again looking at a few inches of rain, as we are going to see more significant impacts from rain from Herminia, or from the weather fronts getting thrown in by Herminia here. Through Sunday into Monday, again, those warnings do come into force in the morning, with the wind warning expiring in the afternoon and the rain warning expiring on Monday morning. And then into Monday, further warnings issued. Still got that rain warning issued, another rain warning issued here for Wales. Again, looking at a few inches of rain through much of Monday. And then a more widespread wind warning issued for many southern portions of England and Wales from 6 a.m. on Monday until 6 p.m. on Tuesday. And again, for some very strong winds, 60 to 70 miles per hour, potentially in these spots. There is the risk of a further disturbance in the far southeast, as we'll see from the UKV in a few moments' time. That could potentially get to 70 or 80, even for some inland spots. But that's something to keep an eye on. A very small scale system, as I said, could provide significant impacts locally, maybe even amber warning worthy, but we'll wait and see. But more widespread impacts here for those southern portions, and finally into Tuesday, still got that widespread wind warning that came into force on Monday. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV now to have a look in detail at all of the conditions over the coming days, you can see that precipitation band out in the west is slowly moving in over the coming hours and is going to give enhanced snow and wind over the coming hours, especially across Scotland and those northern regions. However, into Sunday, we start to see Herminia arriving, or at least the impacts associated with Herminia. You can see this big weather front pushing in lots more heavy rain, especially for England, Wales, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, but also getting into parts of Scotland, producing a bit of snow. Through Sunday evening, look at this. The UKV picks up on a small little disturbance within the main flow. This is associated with the storm Herminia. It's not Storm Herminia. That's sat out in the mid-Atlantic. This is developing within the flow, i.e. another small low pressure system developing within the larger low pressure system, and that could bring enhanced precipitation and winds. Not all models picking up on this system. I don't think the arpège does. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty with this, but it's these sort of features that could escalate those warnings up to amber levels. So we'll have to wait and see the details for that. That eventually clears through in eastern areas. You can see a little hook round the centre of the low there. Not quite as distinct as a run we saw yesterday, but nonetheless still develops it and still could be significant. But you can just see there is generally a lot more of a wider precipitation risk here, and it does continue through much of Monday. Lots of heavy showers, and then eventually you can see this curve in these showers. That's eventually the centre of Herminia clearing eastwards, but it is losing its intensity by this point and is slowly clearing away. And then we could see another low potentially trying to arrive there on Wednesday, but by this point we're starting to see pressure rising from the south and the east, so that again halting this low, but it still could provide some impacts there as we do head into the latter part of the week. Now, if you look at the mean sea level pressure, Irwin's clearing out to our north at the moment, and we're seeing a temporary lull. But by this evening, more low pressure systems are pushing in from the west, and eventually you can see into Sunday, we start to see Herminia sat out to our west. That's the system out there, and you can see it's just off screen, it's trying to push in, but it doesn't have much success, and it kind of just sits out in the Atlantic, just pushing very strong winds our way and for much of Western Europe, and eventually through Monday pulls through, but you can see it is filling in, pressure is rising, and it slowly disintegrates away. And then another low there into Wednesday, but again, very small scale system before eventually getting pushed away. If you look at the wind gusts associated with that, you can see a little bit of lull through this afternoon, through Saturday afternoon, picking up though through the evening, especially in the north and the west, and then really picking up through Sunday morning, looking widely at 40 to 60 miles per hour, up towards 70 across higher ground or towards coastal areas, and it continues like that for much of Sunday evening into Monday. And then this is where the main potential issues with Herminia are. You can see 80 or even 90 out to sea, but for most areas we're not looking above 60 or 70 at the moment. But again, positioning and intensities can make all the difference. Those strong winds though are covering much of France, the Bay of Biscay, towards Spain and Portugal. Continuing to see those very strong winds through much of Monday. Again, 50, 60 potentially inland before slowly clearing away and eventually starting to die out there as Herminia clears through. Some more intense winds around that system there through Wednesday, but again, it's very small scale and we're not seeing it picked up by all runs, so we'll have to wait and see before that eventually does clear. If you finally just look at the max temperatures, you can see this afternoon it's pretty chilly. Low single digits in the north and west, 5 or 6 or even 7 in the far south, much, much colder. As we do see that polar maritime air moving in, you can see that on the upper air temperature level at the moment, -4 to -6. So again, dew points were slightly lower, a bit more sustained than we could even see colder than this. But at the moment it is a transient polar maritime air mass, so just chilly and below average. As we progress through Saturday, evening temperatures dropping down towards freezing in quite a few areas, but as the wind and rain starts to move in from the west, those temperatures will slowly rise above freezing, and for much of Sunday, low single digits in the north and the east, perhaps getting more towards the high single digits in the south and the west as we see a milder sector moving through with Herminia. Through Monday, it's still pretty chilly, a bit milder overnight, but doesn't rise too much during the afternoon of Monday, only 5 to 7 degrees for many, low single digits further northwards, and then into Tuesday, similar conditions, mid-single digits or even high single digits in the far south. A frost potentially in the north and west into Wednesday morning, and then slowly again, 5, 6, 7 degrees during Wednesday, but we should start to see potentially a bit of a bump in those temperatures later on in the week, but still the risk of frost there even into Thursday morning. So the rest of January, although it's not a traditional colder spell, no northerly or easterly winds, we've got a lot of cold air involved in this westerly flow. We are on the cooler side of the jet stream, with the jet stream now sinking slightly further southwards over the coming hours. So it just generally means we're going to be average to below average over the coming days. Not significantly, but enough to bring a bit of frost, a bit of snow in places, and just generally a cold feel. But again, nothing too out of the ordinary. It is January, we must remember. It is the coldest month of the year. So seeing temperatures towards freezing overnight and mid-single digits during the day, even though that's pretty cold compared to some of the past Januaries we've had, it is pretty bog standard, if we're being honest, when it comes to the actual climate for the UK. So just generally chilly there over the next week or so as we do round out the first month of 2025. Now, I do just want to show you the arpege run. We're not looking really at specific winds here, but I just want to show you the bigger evolution of Herminia, just so we can see it on a better scale. When we look at the UKV, it does cut off some of that Atlantic portion that we actually do want to look at for Herminia, because it is, as I said, sat further westwards. Now, these are the latest wind gusts, and you can see Herminia arriving through this evening out to the west. Very strong winds. Some of the winds getting up to the levels of Irwin out in the Atlantic, potentially up to 100 miles per hour. But I will stress it does weaken on approach. Still potentially 70, 80, and some very strong winds there for the far southwest in isolation. They're not massive wind field of those very strong winds. But the overall wind field for Herminia is a lot larger here, because you can see all the way down to the northern tip there of Spain and Portugal, seeing again 70, 80 miles per hour into parts of the Bay of Biscay as well, and just throwing lots of very strong winds towards much of Western Europe. So just repeated bouts of very strong winds there, potentially picking up on that system there in the far southeast, again picking up those winds slightly there through Sunday. That's one to keep an eye on that. potentially could even be named itself. But again, that will be up to the discretion of the Met Office depending on its development. But this is Herminia, set out to the west of the Republic of Ireland, just throwing lots of weather fronts and bouts of very strong winds before eventually clears eastwards. So you can see that the system named Herminia isn't going to bring one big massive spell of strong winds over sort of 6 to 12 hours like Irwin did, where it does clear through. It's going to linger out to the west and just bring on and off very strong gusty winds. So it's not a clear-cut big storm system. It's one that's going to linger for about 36 to 48 hours, just bringing a vast array of impacts before it does slowly clear. And as I said, through Sunday into Monday, within the main flow, we could see development of that slightly more intense system there in the far southeast within the general area of low pressure. So that is something to also keep an eye on, as that could have again significant impacts. And if we do just zoom in, you can see that here through Sunday evening, locally seeing 70 or 80 mile per hour winds potentially there inland. So again, we'll have to wait and see, but could cause some issues there Sunday into Monday for that small system. But again, I'll give you an update of that tomorrow as we do get nearer to the event. Of course, though, we need to have a look at the longer range. You can see generally still very unsettled. On the colder side of the jet, you see the black line is well to our south now. Irwin is clearing out towards Scandinavia and filling in as it does. This is Herminia arriving out to the west, and you can see it sits out to the west as a very large area of low pressure over the coming hours, just continually pushing gusty winds and rain our way, eventually clearing eastwards, and we see that next low pressure system developing potentially to our south, but already you see the pressure is rising, and look at this, high pressure is building in. Now, the latest GFS does struggle to completely build in the high pressure. It does flirt with low pressure at times, and longer term, potentially more storm systems move in. But generally speaking, we are looking at more high pressure dominating conditions here for early February, which is a positive. Less rain, less colder or cold and windy conditions. Still could be chilly with a bit of an inversion as we are still in winter months, but generally a much more settled outlook. Similar conditions from the GEM. Again, those storm systems clearing over the coming days. Eventually the pressure rising later on this week, pretty much completely taking over just as we move into February. And you see much more dominant here from the GEM, even north enough to provide a bit of an easterly flow. Some cold air flirting with Central Europe, and that could drift our way. But generally we are under mild air mass, but you can see at the surface still pretty chilly, especially across the southeast with air coming in off the near continent because of an inversion taking place. So that's the risk if that high pressure really does dominate. We're seeing a slight easterly wind. We saw that earlier during January, and that could be repeated here with those very low dew points. If we look at those dew points, very low dew points across Europe could drag in some cold, dry air, and that could give further chilly conditions into early February, but settled. If you look at the latest ECM, though, we have broadly very similar, lots of low pressure systems clearing through. Eventually high pressure builds in and again dominates for much of early February. Again, does come up against some battling here with lower pressure, especially into kind of the second week of February. It does flirt with bringing very stormy conditions, especially for Scotland, but the high pressure never goes too far, and eventually towards the end of the run, high pressure builds back in. Pretty mild upper air temperatures trying to move in, but chilly air never too far away. If you finish by looking at the latest ensembles, very up and down over the next kind of week or so to round out January, and you can see generally upper air temperatures around average or below average. Not by massive amounts, but by a couple of degrees, and that's why it's going to be fairly chilly. Lots of precipitation spikes there for London, of course, not being in sort of the main firing zone for any of the storminess that we've had the last couple of days or the next few days, apart from potentially that system Sunday night. But apart from that, most of the strong winds are further northwards over the past couple of days and further westwards over the next few days, but we'll still see some of the rain, so it still will be generally pretty unsettled. However, turn into February, look at that, much drier, not zero precipitation at the moment, so there is still some uncertainty, but the upper air temperatures are a little bit all over the place, and that is all dependent on those airflows. As I said at the start of the video, not quite sure exactly where the wind direction will be coming from. If it's more of a southwesterly, then it'll be very mild. If it's more of a southeasterly or easterly, then it could go very cold. So we'll have to wait and see, but the big thing is low precipitation, and if we look at the sea level pressure, look at that, you can't deny that big rise in pressure there into early February. 2 metre temperatures, chilly over the coming days, but you can see very up and down with a little diurnal range. I do think these are a little bit wrong. Again, Ensembles don't always deal with these very small microclimate conditions too well, but generally chilly and in longer range, no massive spike. As I said, even though the upper air temperatures might rise, still could be chilly at the surface because of high pressure inversion. And finally, if we look at the ECMWF, up and down over the next week, very similar, and then longer range, again, seeing a lot of uncertainty, and yeah, not too different from the GFS at all, so pretty strong agreements here from the latest ensembles. So anyway, thanks for watching, make sure you stay safe. Make sure you stay safe over the coming days. Going to continue to see those stormy impacts. Not expecting anything near as significant with Storm Herminia as we've seen with Storm Owen, but it is going to impact different areas, different coastal regions. So do stay safe. And of course, those southern and western areas are going to be most impacted by Storm Herminia. So just keep an eye on those latest forecasts. As we're looking at that system on Sunday night, could be a very small pickup of very strong winds there for a time. Other systems like that could develop as well. So those sort of things to keep a very, very close eye on, as those could escalate those warnings to amber in a few spots. But of course, we'll keep you updated if we see any major changes. And of course, do keep up to date with those Met Office warnings as well. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.